Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Val Walker. Val is a rehabilitation consultant and blogger for Psychology Today and the Health Story Collaborative. She is the author of The Art of Comforting, an Nautilus Book Award Gold winner, and 400 Friends and No One to Call. With a Master of Science degree in rehabilitation counseling from Virginia Commonwealth University, she has led support groups and workshops for 25 years for people living with illness, disability, grief, and trauma. She lives in Boston and speaks throughout New England at human services agencies, medical centers, hospices, and universities. And Val, welcome to the Teaching Journeys Podcast. It's a pleasure having you on the program today.
It's great to be here, Dave.
Yeah, we go back a ways. I think we met through the joys of social media. I think when social media wasn't so unpredictable, I think we met through Facebook. We found that we had a lot in common, and we've had several really great conversations over the years. And it was finally good to be able to bring you on the podcast and talk about your recent book, Healing with Wonder, and everything that led up to that. And I think we're going to have a great conversation about your experiences and what you're doing today. So I'm looking forward to it.
Me too.
My first question is, tell our audience about the experience or experiences that have shaped your life path and your life passions today.
Well, I never realized that my sense of wonder, I've always been the kid that went, wow, perpetually walking around with wow. In fact, as a nickname, my father called me Wowinda. It was just a built-in part of me. And in the big 5-factor personality traits, I am high in openness, which makes you very prone to wonder and awe, and you're always curious. So long story made short, this quality of wonder about me, I never really valued it enough, but it was always such a strong part of me that helped me through trauma and grief. Was I had this ability somehow to just be wowed even when I was feeling awful. A bird would come, or the sunset would come, or a piece of music would come on, and it would just stop me in my tracks. And I could actually feel awful and cry, but also have an awe moment within the same 5 minutes and be lifted out of some funk I was in because I could see beauty. I mean, I think it's a blessing that I have an ability to see beauty and be awed by things. But the thing is, Dave, I didn't take it seriously. That people didn't value traits like awe and openness. But later on, I found out when I discovered through Psychology Today and reading bloggers writing about awe and wonder, suddenly there was all this research being done on the power of awe and wonder and how healing it is, and it had been overlooked and underappreciated as a human trait. But now they're finding it very valuable for resilience and strength. And I went, hey, so I wrote a book about it when I found out neuroscience was validating this trait I'd always had, and that saved my life, actually, in one time. A secret hidden strength of mine has been validated, and then I wrote a book about it. But many other people have this trait, and I wrote the book to help them claim this trait of wonder and awe.
It sounds fabulous. We've had conversations about awe and its importance and its role in terms of improving individuals' well-being. And I believe awe is a positive psychology concept. I believe it came out of positive psychology. And, if you take a look at the research on spirituality or spiritual practices, research consistently demonstrates that individuals will place a high degree of emphasis on religion, a degree of emphasis on spirituality, have a greater sense of happiness, contentment. It's suggested that it could be protective against mental illness just in and of itself. So that is a trait, and awe is a part of that, that can really help individuals connect to something greater than themselves, see the greater beauty in the world when sometimes they can't see the greater beauty in themselves.
And honestly, whether you call it religion or spirituality, the beauty of studying awe and wonder is not only do you have a scientific language for it, but what I like about it is it unlocks us from all the highly charged images and prejudices we have about even spiritual practices or religions or whatever your thing is. What is sort of safe about saying an awe and wonder moment that you had? You can have a state of reverence and find something that you would even call sacred that
Yep.
may have even saved your life. But you don't have to get religious about it or spiritual about it. You can just say, I had this moment. And awe and wonder, I think, lifts us out of all that baggage around those other terms. And so now you can have these moments, whether they're in nature or with music or through another human being.
Yep. And it's just taking stock and believing in just the magic of the universe, that there does not have to be
Yeah.
a scientific explanation for everything that happens. There are
hmm
things that, and we've talked about this on several occasions, there are things that have happened that we know to be real, but if we had to give some type of an evidence-based explanation for it, we couldn't. But we know because of our experience what was going on with us at that particular time, that that experience was real. And if individuals ask the right questions about that to determine what that experience meant to somebody, they can understand the reality of it. So tell us, you mentioned that there is neuroscience research about how awe and wonder help us through trauma and grief. Tell us more about that. What is the research indicating specifically?
Well, when I discovered, we'll just call it the great frontier
Hmm.
of awe and wonder through neuroscience. So all these psychologists, and not only the positive psychology psychologists, more and more neurologists and social psychologists were studying this. But I think it was the positive psychologists that got it popular. But then many other kinds of scientists started studying this. First, I'm just going to do a quick little shout out for enormous research that went into what's called the awe experience scale. And it has 6 major criteria when you're having an awe moment. Could be 30 seconds long, could be 5 minutes, 5 hours long. But let's say even a brief experience of awe, there are basically 6 different criteria. And we all probably have 2 or 3 of those when we're having a real honest to God awe moment. But I think it's kind of nice to sort of legitimize, hey, is this real awe? Yes, it is. And there's 6 things to look at. One is one of the greatest qualities of awe is a sense of vastness. For example, when you're looking at a wide sky or a wide ocean, a wide open field, a huge horizon,
Hmm.
that elicits awe in us. And also music that creates vastness, very expansive kinds of music. That's why music like the soundtrack for Interstellar or movies about space, very spacious kind of music, that creates awe. Look at some of the spiritual kinds of songs that create that extended, vast quality. So, vastness. Number 2 is a sense of altered time where time can stop. You kind of feel like you're not caught up in time. you slow down. Things seem to come, just you come into the present, you stop tracking and thinking about moving faster time. You step out of time. So it's an altered time state. That's part of awe. So when something takes your breath away, like a cardinal landing by your window, you lose track of time for a second. Number 3 is physical sensations of awe. Chills, goosebumps, you gasp a little bit. Different qualities go off in your body. The vagus nerve changes, your stress response shifts. All kinds of beautiful biological things are happening, and you feel more grounded in your body. You become very present in your body. That's why for trauma survivors like I was, my all moments got me in my body and slowed me down. And another quality of an all moment, the 4th criteria, would be a sense of not being separate from things, a sense of oneness with things.
Yes.
It all feels like it's happening at once together. I was one with the birds, one with the trees, one with the sunset, one with the people standing there. When people talk about an eclipse, everybody felt it at that same moment. It was universal. Powerful feeling of oneness. And another quality of the awe scale, another criteria, was that it was inexplicable somehow. And it didn't accommodate, it didn't fit you couldn't accommodate it easily verbally. It might be, yes, you just didn't know what to say, but it was, you got it, you know?
Mhm.
And those are some of the main qualities that we experience in an awe moment. And anyway, I think that what I was able to do with experiences that other people had of awe and wonder that I was writing about, they wanted to share those criteria through their own experience, how they
Mhm.
lost that sense of time, or how they felt one with everything and how they welcomed that feeling. There's one final 6th criteria called the small self, and that's the small self in a good way, where they're so much more greater than you are. You just
Mhm.
feel small in perspective, but it's a beautiful humility. You don't know everything. It's not all about you. You're part of this. You're a small part of it. So there you go, Dave. I just did a whole lecture on the awe experience scale. So everybody who's listening, I hope you can take note and enjoy some awe moments.
Yeah, I like the vastness part, and also I like the sense of time just kind of slowing down and stopping.
You
Um,
relate.
yeah, and just the vastness, and also just feeling infinitesimally small in comparison to what's going on in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
And we just realize we are part of a greater whole. We're part of something greater than ourselves. And, all we have to do is do our part to be part of the oneness and do what we can to make a difference in this world. And that's how we can measure abundance if we look at it through the perspective of awe.
And they're all experiences that we can create or co-create and experience those kinds of, those kinds of feelings and that state of awareness is really vital for ourselves, but also, I believe, to a healthy society, a healthy mindset of not just us, but collectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's talk about your book, Healing with Wonder. That is, that's been a passion project for you for quite a while.
Well,
Um, and I know it came out earlier. Was it earlier this year it came out? Or
came out January 8th. It's called Healing Through Wonder, How Awe Restores Us After Trauma and Loss.
So tell us about the book. Tell us, what you want readers to take away from it.
As I said earlier, I had not realized I had undervalued my sense of wonder and how it helped me be resilient. And when I brought in all the neuroscience research and told a big story of my life, as well as 4 other people's stories, what I realized was what I want everybody to take home is that your moments of awe and wonder, your sense of wonder is a source of strength. So if you are a trauma survivor or dealing with intense grief, or profound trauma, I think we feel isolated, we feel separate from others. And even a moment with a bird or a moment with a piece of music, that can open you up to realizing maybe you are connected to somebody, maybe somebody else who likes birds as much as you do, right? Maybe you're fed up with humanity and you've had a lot of bad experiences, or you're so caught up in grief that you don't feel like you have anything to share with anyone. But my goodness, something happens where you light up and you come alive and come into the present moment. You get out of your rumination and suddenly you're there. And if somebody's in that room with you, they're going to have a cardinal moment right with you. And it might break the ice a little bit of your whatever that mindset was keeping you distant from people and scared of people or worried about people. Suddenly you just hang out with somebody and enjoy that moment of the bird. And so awe and wonder has a beautiful way of connecting us, especially when we are really isolated.
Yeah, I would think it would, because if we believe we are part of the oneness, when we see that cardinal, we see that butterfly, we become one with that living being. And our animal friends are the butterflies, the birds, they all have something to teach us. And if we also believe that it is a sign from our loved one, and that energy is energy and can be, our loved ones can appear in any form, I would imagine that not only provides us with some many peaceful moments in grief, but I could see where that would also develop resilience as well too, particularly when
Hmm.
there's not a lot of other support that may be available to somebody, let's say, who lives in outer rural America where they don't have access to support groups.
Right.
We talked about awe and how it helps individuals through trauma and grief. But has there been any specific studies that have correlated awe with the development of resilience and how that looks and works?
There are some great studies, particularly just to healthy longevity, and studies about how it affects the mind and our aging process, giving us a better sense of agility. It helps build, frankly, balance into our regular everyday activities. They've shown that activities that doesn't have to be great big awe moments, like you don't have to go to the Taj Mahal or have a near death experience or anything, but just the small ways that if you cultivate awe in your daily life, if you take a walk, if you watch a bird feeder outside your window, if you sit on the porch and watch the sunset, if you have these routines that evoke wonder and awe, especially where they've done research, is curiosity and wonder going after. You may have a sense of awe, but it's the spring benefits of curiosity and wonder. Now that keeps you really healthy too, because you want to keep learning. You want to keep developing. What's going to happen? You wonder about things. That gives you something to get up in the morning about. Like, I want to see what happens. What's going on with those birds out there at the bird feeder? Oh, what's that? Oh, I love that music that I heard from that new band. Hey, what's going on with them? So these, don't just call them interests.
Yep.
They're finding that when you have, and don't even just call them passions. I mean things that stimulate your wonder and make you fascinated, make you go, like I like to say, wow, all the time. Things that make you say, wow. So if you bring that wow factor not only into your life, but the big thing is, David, sharing it. And did you know that just sharing stories of a moment of awe with somebody will do the same benefits to the brain as having the awe moment live when it first happened? Because by reliving it, people can get those goosebumps and their breath can be taken away, and we can all go there to that moment you had that experience. So the beauty is we can create awe and co-create it with others. And when we build that into our lives, it really helps our health.
Yeah, and
It's good for us.
that the more we share those stories of awe, and particularly with those individuals who are going to be present for it, bear witness to it, and
Yeah.
support it, even if they don't necessarily buy into it themselves, I imagine that that type of reinforcement to share that story probably reprograms the neural pathways that were
Mhm.
programmed initially to deal with trauma. Now it
Right.
deals with a trauma recovery response. It replaces the reaction to trauma
Right.
with awe and with a
Which,
response that is more uplifting.
and it's when you make it a practice, when it becomes a regular part of your life, not just a one and done. Oh, I went to see the Taj Mahal. Like, you know, we what all the research is showing is that don't think that it has to be a big, exciting thing that your awe might come from, or
Mhm.
that it even has to be some super spiritual thing. It can just be the little things. But the main thing that they're asking us to do is build it into our life, believe in it, and practice it and do it. So the one and done big all moments in the long run aren't as important necessarily as the small everyday, making it regular. And that's how you build those neural pathways. I work with a lot of seniors. I teach at senior centers and we play lots of word games, do storytelling and lots of verbal interaction to keep their brain sharp and to keep everybody socializing. But when you bring in something that has the wow factor, you get everybody, you know, so to me, you know this, Dave, as an educator, it's really good to bring in a wow factor thing.
Mhm.
Educators might want to get everybody looking at a big screen, looking at the Webb telescope, looking at a planet or looking at something going on that night. Look at
Mhm.
the moon change or something. Just that we can have reverence through our technology helping us get close looks at nebulas and stuff. We can watch beautiful nature videos of time-lapse photography and watching metamorphosis into a butterfly. There's so many excellent artists and
Mhm.
photographers and cinematographers and creating when we go to immersive art experiences like IMAX to watch, you know, something about prehistoric times, or they can do so much now using real images and making it so accessible for us. So we can have that awe that way, but of course, naturally, through our own eyes in our nature experiences and sharing with others. By the way, bird watching, birding has become popular. It really has taken off, just saying as an example of people wanting to build in a regular activity so they can socialize and chat with people while they're walking together birding. It can be social for isolated people. It's a great activity. A
Mhm.
lot of lonely boomers out there, singles, doing a lot of birding these days because they can get together watching their beloved birds doing things. But I'm just saying they're these beautiful activities that not only bring the awe out in us, but like I said, help us connect and spread a kind of reverence as well for our earth and for the more than human and the greater than yourself, bigger things. Because we
Yeah.
need that. We starve for that. And so there are more and more activities promoting that.
As you were talking about the importance of birding, I'm thinking as we get older and we experience more losses, the more we
Yeah.
can stay engaged. I think the more we can stay engaged in activity, we stay curious, the longer we live a good quality life. And I like to sit and just watch crows. And, we've talked
Oh, yeah.
about the significance of crows in my life. Um, Crows can teach us a lot and about dealing with trauma and dealing with grief. Crows are very adaptable. They take what the earth gives them. It doesn't matter if it's meat, if it's green, if it's seed, if it's stone. They are adaptable. And we can learn a lot about adaptability and adapting, particularly during challenging times from crows. They can teach us to confront our greatest fears. I mean, I've seen crows chase birds that are bigger than them, hawks, out of their territory. They teach us about community. They grieve as well too. I mean, there's been studies, I think, where they have actually had kind of ritual funerals where the crow has died and the rest of the crows in that family will gather around and mourn. And animals do mourn. Birds mourn.
Yeah.
So they can teach us a lot about humanity, and they can teach us a lot about resilience as well too, just from how they interact, how they adapt, and just how they address challenge.
Well, I spent a huge section of my book talking about what I learned from blue herons,
Yeah.
starting with a moment I had with the heron that truly saved my life. After that powerful moment I had with that great blue heron, for the rest of my life, I followed herons to their habitats that they loved, especially around water, marshes, lots of watery places. And I had the most exciting and rewarding time, even back in my early 20s when I had been so terribly traumatized and I was suicidal and I'd had that first experience with the heron. When I was around herons, I watched them just like you were talking about what crows have to teach us. I learned amazing things from herons. They seem so solitary so much of the time, but at certain seasons of their lives, my goodness, they can be very social birds.
Yeah.
And they go to their heronries and they build nests and they're incredible mates, at least for the season, building nests together. They're very cooperative and they're very noisy, you wouldn't think those. When they all get in their heronries, they're purposely noisy and busy, and it's a madhouse in those heronries because they fend off all kinds of predators by being obnoxious and noisy. And yet, the same bird can be solitary, can be sort of a harbinger, and go to the edges of habitats, often further than other birds, and be, if you like, a harbinger. Go out and sort of scout out places alone and then get back and bring information to other species about where to go and where not to go. So they make wonderful scouts and harbingers when they're flying solo. And so I found all these important symbols and metaphors and lessons for myself that even though I was really introverted and shy and nervous around people, at other times I could be social, but I don't always have to be social. And the heron showed me you can have the whole opposite sides of you like that. And the heron showed me that kind of going to the edge of kind of the veil between night and day and the edges where the piers would go out into the water and long peninsulas where the rocks would go way out into the middle of nowhere. The herons like those kinds of places. So I began realizing herons taught me how to be the harbinger who can kind of be on the edge and see things before the other people see those things. And through my grief and loss and trauma, I was on the edge a lot, sort of not seeing the way most people would see. And then I could come back and share it later. So the herons were my teachers. I know you
Yeah.
have crow stories. Read my book and you'll see heron stories, but it's
Yeah.
only 1/3 of the book.
Well, and I think this is a good segue into that breathtaking moment with the blue heron where you were close, you were on the edge of despair.
So It's important to let people know how the whole book started, how I wanted to write a book after that experience. But go back to the late 1970s, and I was getting out of a domestic violence situation with my first boyfriend. Not going to get into too much detail there, except it was really bad. I was with a dangerous person, and I was trying to run away, and he stalked me and followed me. I couldn't keep my job because he could show up at the job. I couldn't keep my apartment because he would show up at the apartment. I ended up homeless because of this guy, and back then, unfortunately, there were not shelters for women very easy to find anyway. There weren't, and there wasn't very much protection from women. And I know things still have more to improve now. But at that time in 1979, it wasn't too good out there. And even psychotherapists, if you had wanted to get a little help, didn't understand trauma and domestic violence in 1978, 79. So let's just say it got really bad, Dave, and I didn't want to be alive. And I was just tired of running and never having a place to live, and ended up at a campground that was desolate and sat by the James River outside of Richmond, Virginia. I'd wandered and hitchhiked my way. I was a vagabond, and I had managed to steal a bottle of Valium from somebody and took some wine with me to take the pills and wash it down. And there I was sitting on a tree stump by the big river in the twilight. It was still sunset. It was that beautiful sky, amazing sky, and a moon was rising. It was a little crescent moon coming up. But I was oblivious to all of that, and I was just sitting there I had swallowed just a few pills, and I was starting to wash it down, and just out of nowhere, it seemed like this huge blue heron circled over and landed near me and was about 10 feet away and stared right into my soul, just stopped me. A big bird like that staring at you like that, like amazing intense gaze at me, and they have piercing eyes. So it really got my attention. But more than that, I was completely in awe. Talk about altered time, everything stopped and I became one with everything around me. That heron allowed me to feel connected to that, this being. And I also had lost my grandmother recently, and I just felt like somebody was helping me. I felt my grandmother's presence, and that was also a reason why I was suicidal. She had only died 2 weeks earlier of a heart attack, and I felt horrible because I hadn't seen her since I was running from the abuser. Felt awful about it, and I had heard she was worried about me. So back to that moment just lifted me out of what I called the thicket of my thoughts. Just my thoughts all about ending my life and my human drama, Dave. The heron took me out of the human drama. I became one with everything around me that was so much bigger. And I saw this beauty and majesty around me. I can't believe how beautiful this moon is rising above me and the sparkling water from the moon rays and in the huge field around the river. It was such an ecstatic moment of feeling alive. And I got down on my knees. I do not want to end my life. And I thanked my grandmother for protecting me. And indeed, I took that bottle and threw the pills out into the river. Heron took off, and I was never the same since. But I did follow herons. I became a heron lover. I did. I would go to all the watery places because they were often secluded and safe and like little sanctuaries for me. And I spend a great early part of the book talking about these sanctuaries I would find, and that it helped build strength for me. I became, I could get back into my body. I could breathe again. I became present with everything instead of caught up in dissociation and all that. And it got me strong. But the weird thing was, Dave, when I first saw psychotherapists, when I tried to start getting help after my Heron experience, the saddest thing happened, which I write about quite poignantly in my book, is that those psychotherapists didn't really value my experiences with the Herons. They called it escaping. Val, you need boundaries. You need to learn how to get along with people. Well, you got to start somewhere, you
Mhm.
know, and they did not value how nature and our experiences with awe and wonder could actually save a life from a
Yeah.
person who had been so hurt by other humans to have some way of connecting. And I was so devastated by the way people didn't value my experiences. But there was one saving grace, was that there was a friend I made because I cleaned people's houses to get myself by. Then one of the ladies I cleaned for ended up, we became buddies. We became
Mhm.
friends, and it turns out she loved chickadees, and my grandmother had loved chickadees, and her grandmother had loved chickadees, and we told these beautiful stories about our grandmothers and birds, and lo and behold, Dave, we went on walks along the river. I showed her all these beautiful spots, and this
Mhm.
friend of mine was an important part of my recovering from all the trauma, because she shared not only stories about the birds, but spiritual stories about how we felt in communicating with our grandmothers through spirit. And I had nobody safe I could talk to about that, but she got that. So that's just a little bit. There's a lot more, but I hope that was okay to get in that far.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that gives a good picture of how you developed your sense of awe and how through your own personal experiences and why you promote that so passionately with those people that cross your path and that you work with. So yeah, I think we have some good context there. My audience has some good context for your passions today. So yeah, I know you featured other stories of individuals who had experienced any that stand
Mhm.
out in your book that are just really memorable for you that you could share
Yes.
with our audience?
Oh, they all four do. I'm going to talk about the four turning points, just if I can. The
Mhm.
first person, Robin, had an experience at the gravesite grieving the death of her 20-year-old son due to substance use and overdose. And a dragonfly appeared at the gravesite when she was grieving, and she had a powerful experience, very similar to what I had had with the heron, where the dragonfly brought her into her body, brought her into a sense of oneness. And after that dragonfly moment, she realized she wanted to go out and help others and bring that there were other people who had experienced this kind of grief. And so the dragonfly was her turning point. The dragonfly was important to Robin. The other person, Luke, had had an experience that was quite spiritual, where his brother was lying in a coma, and a priest came into the room for last rites for his brother to perform for his brother who was dying. And the priest was apparently to Luke somebody who he knew from the past, who was very abusive and had known this priest in the past. And all of a sudden, Luke just stood up in rage and said, "Get out of here," to the priest, because he didn't want that priest around who had ruined his childhood. By standing up to the priest and yelling at the priest, I don't want you giving last rites to my brother. Get out of this room." Suddenly the brother woke up. So this passion and righteousness to stand up for his brother brought his brother back from a coma. His
Wow.
brother snapped out of the coma at that moment. It was miraculous to Luke that that happened. Another experience was Carol, who was dealing with addiction to opioids, and she was terribly, terribly distraught. And one day she was trying to get through her sobriety. She was going through a lot of treatment, and she didn't feel like anything was working, and she was about to give up, and she was on her way to go to a party where she could use again, because she had really gotten disgusted with herself. It was like, let me just hitch a ride. I'm going to go to this party. And while she was on the way, she hitched a ride with a truck driver. And a song came on the radio called Hold On for One More Day. You know, that Wilson Phillips song.
Yeah.
And Carol had enormous connection to that song, but had forgotten about it. And here that song came on, and Carol just realized something was looking out for her, like, no, I'm not going to go to that party. And she got the truck driver to let her out, and she went and cried for hours and just said, no, no. And she felt this huge connection from the force of that song and that music not to go use again. And it really stayed with her through her life. And she has other stories about the reoccurrence of that song 20, 30 years later, and how it kept coming back into her life at amazing times in her life. So those are 3 out of 4. And Ricky had a great experience, my 4th person, with a person who he had seen at a scene of an accident, who came up to him and asked if he was okay. And for a moment there, he almost thought she was an angel, because she cared about him and had stepped through the dangerous aspects of this accident to check on him. And he had an amazing moment of feeling like some amazing person had shown up in his life. And she seemed to disappear after that. So these kinds of stories I get into real great detail with them, and I'm so thankful to the 4 people I profiled who we really did a deep dive into these stories. I hope I didn't say too much about them, but they hope this is making people want to read their stories in great detail, because you don't quite know how it affected them later, and
Yeah.
save that for the book.
Well, and I think sharing what you did about their stories, if anything, is going to pick my audience's curiosity, where they're going to want to find out more and purchase the book.
Yeah, and
So,
I don't, I hope, as a book promotion activity, how you don't want to think about that, because when you write a spiritual book, you want it just to have its own magic about how it gets people. But I must say, I think it's good to have a little bit about the stories. So thank you for letting me share some of their stories.
my pleasure. Tell our audience about your YouTube channel and how that aligns with the book, or how the YouTube channel even influenced the writing of the book.
Yeah. Well, Dave, what's so joyous for me is that I started the YouTube channel long before I even had a publisher for this book. Robin, who I also profiled in the book, Robin and I said, there are a lot of people who have stories of awe and wonder that come to our support groups. Robin especially does grief support work with her organization called the Sun Will Rise Foundation, which is something very powerful. Her deceased son, had said, the sun will rise, always gave her hope. And she named her organization, a foundation, the Sun Will Rise. And she does peer grief support, advocacy, and facilitation, her organization trains a lot of facilitators in grief support. So she was the perfect person to sort of collect stories by having guests from her different groups, and also guests like you, people I knew, other writers, other educators. So it was a gallery of storytelling. Really, the video was a chance to just invite people to come and share their stories of awe and wonder. And I hadn't seen a YouTube channel dedicated just to storytelling around themes of awe and wonder. Also, I knew that there could be some good content for some writing for profiles for people as well. So I had that on my radar. And later on, when I got the book deal through Bloomsbury Publishing, they were delighted that I already had been gathering stories. And I was very, very fortunate that the people I was profiling with Rob and doing the stories on YouTube could become part of the book.
Yeah, and we had a couple of great conversations when I was on the Healing with Wonder YouTube channel. So it was a lot of fun. So I know that's going to continue to become a platform for individuals to share their stories of awe and wonder, where they're going to be celebrated and where they're going to be supported. So I wish you continued luck with that channel. So, and you and Robin both.
Robin's amazing, by the way. I'm so lucky that she enjoys, she's such a naturally curious and she has a sense of wonder. And she's so good at bringing that out in people.
Yeah, she's got a very nice presence about her. She's just a very, very beautiful soul, as you are. So,
Oh, thank you, Dave. That makes my day, actually.
Mm.
I mean, you don't get enough of, the beauty of coming on with platforms like what you have, Dave. It really is a chance to share parts of ourselves we can't really share in day-to-day life very easily. I mean, you've created a really beautiful space for people, not only to tell stories, but your ability to draw out the essence of people and, the part of them that teaches others, since you're
oh,
teaching journeys.
well, thank you for that compliment. That makes my day as well too. So, and I try to create a very welcoming platform, and so that individuals' stories can authentically come out. Every podcast, I'm the student, and my guest is a teacher, and that's how I approach it. I ask questions that pique my curiosity and hopefully help individuals share their stories in a way that they're happy with.
It's such a great service. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being a part of it as well too. So, if you've left our listeners with just so much good stuff about awe and wonder, but I'm going to ask you to dig once more in that reservoir of wisdom of yours and ask you if you'd like to leave our listeners with one ultimate takeaway today, what would that be?
I did say kind of a semi takeaway at the beginning that our sense of wonder is a source of strength.
Yeah.
So that's easy to stick in the brain. Sense of wonder is a source of strength. But, I'm going to give a shout out to the poet, Mary Oliver.
Yes.
She's also a trauma survivor. She came out with it very, very late in life, in her 70s, I believe. She has poems about awe and wonder and how she has a beautiful line about that she's a bride married to amazement.
Mhm.
And she also said in a poem called The Ponds that she learned that what she needs to keep going in life is a willingness to be amazed. Willingness to be amazed. So it's not just about finding awe, it's a willingness to be open to amazement. And it's a willing thing. It
Mm.
really is. We can will ourselves to get out on a walk or go see one little thing
Mhm.
that causes even a moment of amazement. I love her approach, and just reading her poetry will get you in the mood to get amazed.
Yeah, and I know of her poetry. I've read some of her poetry. It's just fabulous. And I never knew she was a trauma survivor. So thank you for sharing that as well.
Yeah, she shared that in O Magazine, and Maria Shriver, I believe, was the one who interviewed her. Yeah.
My last question for you, this is going to give you a chance to promote yourself a little bit. If people want to contact you, subscribe to your YouTube channel, purchase your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
I got 2 websites, Dave. One all about me as an author with my showcase of my books and, it's like my portfolio website. So my author website is valwalkerauthor.com. But then I was so in love with my Healing Through Wonder book, I made a website to partner my book. And I also include on the website I have a guide in the back of my book to wondrous things. I call it a friendly guide to wondrous things. And it's very personally guided, but a lot of folks will probably jive, like great movies that elicit awe and wonder. For example, movie guides, music guides, book guides to wonder. It's the educator part of me that loves sharing ways to bring the awe factor into a classroom or into your life or with your grandkids. You can also get on my healingthroughwonder.com website, but please get the book too. But the website also will kind of build on what's in the book so you can do more guides to wonder.
And I will make sure all of your contact information gets into the episode before we go live. So with that, Val,
Thanks.
you're welcome. And with that, thank you so much for just a wonderful conversation about awe and wonder. I look forward to future conversations, and it was just great. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.